And now it's time for my final words. I write this every year, and they get longer and longer, so I apologize, but I have a lot to say. So here we go. Mesro Music 2023 is almost wrapped up, and I'd be lying if didn't say I was incredibly exhausted. But honestly, it does get a tiny bit easier each year. My husband joked that I could package up this operational process and sell it, to which I looked at him and said, "Yes, another job to add to my list." Um, so all seriousness though, it's been an incredible year three. I'm honestly still shocked to say year three. We didn't quite hit 3,000 registrations, but increasing registrations by 1,000 people each year isn't too bad. At this point, I think I've watched before. I've said this before. If you've watched before, you kind of know the drill. And really, what I have to say is this year, just like the previous years, over 40 speakers have been majority minority in both gender and race, representing 9 different countries. We had no all male or all white panels. In fact, again this year, we had an all women panel and a panel where all speakers were people of color. And as I always say, those panels don't have to be called women in music or quote unquote diversity panels. And in addition, for the second year, all non-sponsored talk speakers were offered payment because all voices are valuable and should be compensated as such. Every year, I try to do a bit better than I did the year before, and I'm especially proud of the increase in Asian representation we had for our speakers this year. Speaking of Asia, I want to talk a bit about accessibility representation. On Friday evening, a young woman in Indonesia emailed me. She told me the conference stream wasn't working for her and emphasized how important this conference was to her because she was a recent grad trying to find a job in music. I did a quick Google search and discovered our streaming provider Vimeo was blocked in Indonesia. I was really bummed about this, so I was trying to figure out solutions. But she emailed me back and told me she was able to find a workaround. And she has since emailed me once a day just to tell me how much she's enjoying the conference. So like now I would just insert like little like tears in the eyes, smiling proud emoji, because honestly, after Friday, I feel like I was exclusively doing this entire conference just for her. I really didn't care if anyone else showed up. I just wanted to make sure that she was enjoying herself. So I hope she's watching today, and I hope she knows that I'm rooting for her entirely. But that's why I do this. It's not for the clout, because trust me, there's easier ways. It's not for the money, because I actually don't make a profit with any of this. All the money gets redistributed as I want it to be. It's to help people because I know how tough the music industry can be, and I want to do as much as I can to make it a bit easier. One of my favorite quotes is from a writer, Daniel Swenson. He said, "If you want people to suffer like you did because you turned out fine, you did not, in fact, turn out fine." And every time I hear people brush off discrimination, unethical work practices, unending, unpaid labor, harassment, unnecessary gatekeeping, lack of professional development, or just generally hostility and nastiness, I think of that quote and very often say it directly to that person. Yes, I know I'm probably really fun at parties. But this event is and will always be for people that want something better. Or as the kids would say, I believe everyone deserves a hashtag soft life. Getting to that point takes work and sacrifice. It's not easy, but it is doable. This year, in addition to the speaker stats I mentioned earlier, of those almost 3,000 registrations that disclosed, 70% were people of color, 57% are a gender minority. Over 1/3 say English is not their first language. 18% identify as part of the LGBTQ community. 52% are under 30 years old, and 92 countries are represented. Big shout out to the sole representation from Zambia, Sri Lanka, and Estonia, to just name a few. While this level of representation sounds impressive, it was actually really easy, and exactly why this event stays virtual, because when the global majority can attend, the global majority does. Measure of Music looks like what the world looks like because the world is invited. Not only is Measure of Music virtual, but the planning, logistics, and operations before and during the event is handled entirely virtually. You can have amazing experiences, build culture and community, and you can do great work virtually. Most of our project participants can attest to just that. Yes, sometimes there's tech issues, but I've been to plenty of conferences and meetings in person that had tech issues while every single person was in the room. If you're a decision maker, I hope you take some of this into account when you're considering your back to office policies. In addition to remaining almost entirely virtual, I'm continuously working to remove as many barriers to entry as possible for this event. To overcome economic barriers, this event has been and always will be free to participants and attendees because access to education and community should not be hindered by cost. In addition, the reason this event is on a weekend is, though I recognize that not everyone gets weekends off, It's always the most people that can attend and participate. One small thing we do to allow project participants to start working is one small thing we do is to allow project participants to start working as late as 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Friday of the event, despite that being 2:30 in the morning for us in the UK, because I recognize that not everyone has the ability to take a day off. And especially in the US, when paid work leave is considered a luxury rather than a human right, we can't fault others for things that are not their fault. Again, I encourage companies to think about actively removing barriers for their employees and artists. Starting from a place of empathy makes practicing this so innate. For example, anytime I'm hiring for a new role that I'd like to conduct an in-person interview for, I always offer times before or after a typical workday, so like 8 a.m. or 6 p.m. This allows a person to not have to find an excuse to leave their current role during their workday for the uncertainty of a new role. Yes, for a day or two, I may be minorly inconvenienced, but I've never received anything but immense gratitude every time I provided this level of accommodation to a prospective employee. Plus, a bonus perk is I always get my pick of the conference rooms. So that's pretty nice. Whenever I write this closing talk, I think a lot about the themes of the weekend. And as you've probably picked up by now, it's barriers. This is the first year I feel like I've knocked down a lot of barriers in Measure of Music. While we've always had our nerdy friends on our side, shout out to Chartmetric for being our only 3X sponsor, this is the first year we've had a label and a distributor as a sponsor. Part of the reason I started Measure of Music is for the industry to understand the importance of data. Not the importance of data and data-related roles, but the importance of data in the music industry as a whole. So this year, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome TuneCore and The Orchard to the ranks of our nerdy friends, alongside with our 2X sponsors, SoundCloud, Musio, Feed Media Group, Illuminate, and Audience. And we welcome for the first time as sponsors BMAT Music Innovators and Hi-Fi. Hi-Fi pulled double duty as a supporting and location sponsor, and BMAT also served as a location sponsor for this year. For the first time, we allowed the project participants the choice to meet up with their group in person. Hi-Fi offered up their Brooklyn office space, and BMAT offered up their Barcelona office space. Seeing those photos come in from the teams working in person was wonderful. I have to say, as a Mid-Atlantic girly, I will always love New York City, but the enthusiasm shown by our Barcelona teams was unmatched. It almost seems like if you offer up opportunities in places that are underserved for those opportunities, such as access to the music industry outside of major markets, those people thrive. Speaking about meeting in person, I want to shout out Elias Delgado. Elias was a project participant year one for Measure of Music, and fast forward 2 years later, he was instrumental to having BMAT as one of our location sponsors for year 3. And I'm so grateful for that. The reason why I'm bringing this up is twofold. One, it's a strong testament to the power of community, that a rising tide lifts all boats, and what you put out in the world in terms of generosity and kindness will come back to you. Two, it shows exactly what it looks like when an employer removes the barriers to help their employees make things happen. So often people reach out to me trying to figure out ways to have their employer involved in Measure of Music. And so often they don't even know the right person to ask or the right person to approach within their company. How to action real change or push through real initiatives at most companies is often ambiguous at best, but when you empower your employees, magic can happen. A great example is my dear friend and 3X mentor for Measure of Music, Jeremiah Gogo, who was able to create a mentorship program at Warner Music UK, specifically targeting and supporting young people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, thanks to the support of HR and the managing director, Tony Harlow. This was able to happen because he was able to find the right stakeholders to make this happen. If you're an employer, imagine all of the amazing ideas and initiatives that fall to the wayside, not because of lack of bandwidth or lack of passion, but because they literally don't know the right person to email at the company. I've always struggled to get companies to be involved in Measure of Music, to provide data or prizes for the hackathon, but most importantly, to participate in the career fair. When I was brainstorming with the wider Measure of Music support team, one of the reasons posed why is because it's a weekend. However, in order to make Measure of Music happen this year, over 100 people, not even including our project participants that were involved in making Measure of Music happen. That's our speakers, mentors, judges, weekend staff, career fair companies, sponsor booths, artist fair companies, startups that pitch, and the on-site support, which means 100 people gave up a small or sometimes large part of the weekend to be involved in Measure of Music. So surely the barrier to be involved isn't letting go of 2 hours of weekend virtually. Instead, What I came to realize as I field messages every week from companies that are hiring, especially for data-related roles that are seeking my recommendation, is that the heavy lift isn't the 2 hours on the weekend, it's the hours before trying to figure out exactly who to talk to make those 2 hours happen. So rather selfishly, if you're a decision maker, I encourage you to make it easier for your employees. Systematic change is impossible without the organization's empower stepping up. Sometimes stepping up is as easy as an email address for your employees to send initiatives that they'd like to work with. Sometimes stepping up is as easy as an email address for employees to send initiatives they'd like to work on. It's establishing a self-submitted internal speaker list to provide to conferences that aren't just your most senior executives, who are often, almost always, overwhelmingly white and overwhelmingly male. Sometimes stepping up is celebrating and featuring your Asian American, Pacific Islander, queer, Black, and women staff members and artists in the other 11 months of the year. Big change can be caused by small actions, and all of this could be so much easier if we all want it to be, all of us together. I'm incredibly grateful to have the support of so many people and companies that share this ethos. So for the last time, I want to thank our presenting sponsors, Audience, a consumer segmentation and cultural understanding platform to help companies identify relevant audiences and discover amazing actionable insights to inform strategy. SoundCloud, a next generation music entertainment company powered by an ecosystem of artists, fans, and thriving communities, plus additional support from the artificial intelligence tech company Lizio, distributor and artist and label services company The Orchard, executive management firm Jump Global, music streaming and social data platform Chartmetric, global entertainment and music data and analytics platform Luminate, global distribution, publishing administration, and promotional service company TuneCore, Feed Media Group, a company that makes it easier, fast, and legal for businesses to use licensed music to create engaging customer experiences that drive revenue, and Hi-Fi, music financial rights organization advocating for artist-centric innovation and transparency. We had additional support from BMAT Music Innovators, as well as media and promotional support from She Said So, Women in Music, the Digiblog, and Queer Capita. This isn't possible without you. This isn't possible without them. And with that, it's time to announce our winners.